Oil markets are shifting, and so is global diplomacy. From Vienna to Washington, two power games are unfolding. One over energy and influence, the other over war and peace. OPEC Plus has opted for a modest oil output increase of 137,000 barrels per day, signaling caution as fears of a supply glut rise and prices dip below $65. But beneath the technical discussions lie geopolitical tensions between Saudi ambition, Russian restraint, US shale resurgence, all redefining control over the global energy order. At the same time, Donald Trump's heated phone call with Benjamin Netanyahu has revealed the widening rift between Washington and Tel Aviv over Gaza, with Trump pushing to end the war and Netanyahu clinging to rejection. Diplomacy has become a duel of egos. Two stories, one of markets, one of morality, and both shaping the world's balance of power. I'm Rana Al-Khassas, and this is In Focus. OPEC Plus's decision to raise production by just 137,000 barrels per day in November marks the group's latest attempt to balance on a knife's edge between price stability and market share. The move follows months of incremental output hikes totaling 2.7 million barrels this year, a reversal of years of production cuts that once aimed to sustain higher oil prices. But the alliance, led by Saudi Arabia and Russia, remains divided. Riyadh, with its spare capacity and long-term market ambitions, pushed for a more aggressive increase. Moscow, constrained by Western sanctions and war-related production limits, urged caution to prevent a price collapse. Analysts predict a supply glut in Q4 as global demand softens and U.S. shale output climbs, pushing Brent crude below $65 per barrel for the first time in months. The stakes go beyond economics. OPEC's every move now carries geopolitical weight, shaping energy, security, inflation, and the political fortunes of leaders from Washington to Riyadh. Joining us now is Meher Nicholas Ferzili, Executive Director of the EU ASEAN Centre, to unpack the deeper motives behind OPEC's decision and what it reveals about the shifting balance of power in the global energy economy. A very warm welcome, sir, and we start off with OPEC Plus opted for a caution increase. 137,000 barrels per day, and of course you heard me in my intro, sir. Why such restraint despite pressure from key producers to expand more aggressively?
I'm delighted to join you today. I think it's very murky. I think most OPEC members do not want to increase output. On the contrary, I think there's a majority of OPEC member states who want output to be stable or even to decrease output. Why? Because the price of oil is collapsing, right? So only a small handful of oil-producing nations want to increase output. One of them is the Emirates, the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi. They think, rightly or wrongly, but that is how they view things. Abu Dhabi believes that they're not producing their fair share of oil, that they have sacrificed, quote unquote, their fair production potential on the altar of OPEC solidarity, But now it's time, they think, for them to raise their level at what is acceptable or fair in their view. That's Abu Dhabi, that's the United Arab Emirates. Then there is that alliance between Saudi Arabia and Russia, which worked very well in the past to the benefit of both countries. So in the past 7-8 years, since His Royal Highness Mohammed ibn Salman rose to prominence and became the crown prince 8 years ago, I think that implicit or even explicit alliance between Riyadh and Moscow has been very beneficial financially for both countries. But what we're seeing now in the past 6-7 years, since the return of President Trump to the White House, we're seeing that alliance crack a little bit. So now there are cracks in the Russian-Saudi Arabian alliance, and that is having an impact on OPEC, right? We call it OPEC plus for a reason, because really the plus symbol means
Okay,
that
Mr. Meher, as you're discussing this topic specifically, which is Saudi Arabia and Russia, the internal split between Saudi Arabia and Russia seems sharper than ever. How significant is this divergence within OPEC plus, and does it signal cracks in the alliance, which you just mentioned, of course?
Yes. So in my opinion, that is the elephant in the room. Apart from, small players like Abu Dhabi wanting to increase their output, or new players like Guyana or whatever, or Brazil, wanting to increase their output. These are small things. The big elephant in the room is the cracks we're seeing every month widening between Moscow and Riyadh, and that is bad because
Moscow and
Riyadh, Moscow and Riyadh.
Riyadh. Oh.
And that is bad because the plus symbol, when we say OPEC plus, that mathematical symbol meant the alliance of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Russian Federation. Why is it bad? It's what we call in finance and economics the game theory, right? So when you have players in the game like Russia and Saudi Arabia working together, being really allied and aligning their strategies and their interests, the game works well for them, right? They can corner, to a certain extent, they can corner the oil market, and they can have relatively high oil prices. When there is infighting, so when the two players, instead of showing a united front, because OPEC has many enemies, so if OPEC is not united, of course, there are many enemies.
Okay, sir, is there a solution for them to be united, or is there a solution for Saudi Arabia and Russia to become again together?
Game theory. It is their interest. So if you study, game theory, you would say, okay, look, guys.
Game theory?
Yeah. In economics and finance, that's a game. If you are not...
game theory, okay.
Yeah. If you guys, as players, are not united, your enemies will profit from that. So it is, of course, their interest, but they are under pressure. There is the Ukraine war, and there is Donald Trump in the White House, and all that is cracking a little bit that Russian-Saudi Arabian alliance, and they will both pay a price for that, because let's face it, now the barrel of Brent is at $64.5, $65 a barrel. That is very low compared to earlier this year, right? Compared to like 8 months ago or 9 months ago, it is 25% lower. And compared to 3-4 years ago, it's 50% lower. That is dramatic. That is very bad, very dangerous. It could bankrupt.
Yes, sir. It's very dramatic, as you mentioned. And of course, this brings us, what you're saying, it brings us to another question, which is, as you said, the Brent is falling below $65. Are we witnessing the early signs of a structural oversupply crisis in global oil markets at this point? As you mentioned, that the Brent is, of course, below $65.
The oil glut, I'm afraid we may have an oil glut, which may last a year or two. So it's potentially, very dangerous if we have an overproduction of oil. And really, 65, 64 is already too low. So if in the coming days we have 60 or 59, many countries in Africa, Asia, Latin America will be ruined. They will lose billions of dollars every day. So not only Iran, people in America, for example, in Europe, and say, oh, it's great, it will hurt Iran. Maybe, but it will hurt 50 countries across Latin America, the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. So
how can it reach 50, sir? And why will it hit Iran specifically?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It will not hit Iran specifically. So there are 40 or 50 countries around the world who will be hurt financially, terribly hurt, if the price of oil comes to $59 or $60, which may well be the case in the coming days. So what I'm saying is, Venezuela, Mexico, Canada, Texas, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Egypt, Kuwait, Abu Dhabi, Iran, Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei, Russia, of course, Russia. So many countries will suffer dramatically. So I think it's very dangerous to play with the price of oil. And I think the only way for the price of oil to rise a little bit again is for that Saudi Arabian Russian alliance to come back in full force.
Some analysts say that this modest increase, sir, reflects OPEC Plus's desire to protect against a U.S. shale comeback. Do you agree?
No, I think many experts. So many experts say that.
The question I ask you, sir, is against what you mentioned in your answer,
agree,
right?
So I don't agree. I don't agree. I think there are experts in America and in Saudi Arabia who say so, and even Canadian experts who think so and say so sincerely. And I think the Canadian, American, and Saudi experts who think so sincerely today are totally wrong. I think it has nothing to do with shale gas, because to be honest, shale gas oil production is a long-term game. You cannot start pumping more oil by pressing a button, right? In most cases, it takes 2, 3, 4, 5 years investments before you can extract oil, including shale gas from the ground, right? So what I'm coming at, to see a new boom, a new rise, dramatic rise of shale gas production in North Dakota, Oklahoma, Alberta, Manitoba, you will need at least 2, 3 years of prices of oil above $90 or $100 a barrel. Today we are at 63, 64. So I think the whole shale gas thing at this stage is propaganda. It's mistaken.
Sir, how do geopolitical tensions from Ukraine to the Middle East influence these production calculations behind closed doors?
A lot, and in my opinion, far too much. We live in the age of geoeconomics. This is the new era. And so in the age of geoeconomics, where you have, the world as a playground, and you have two big giant superpowers, China and America, playing that new Cold War, using the whole planet as a playground for their game, it's normal to have a little bit of geopolitics all over, across sectors, including, of course, the oil sector. So having a little bit of geopolitics is okay. But I think now we're having too much of it. So now the price of oil is influenced excessively by geopolitics, by the war in Ukraine, by the situation in Iran, by America's desire to control natural gas and shale gas production and sell it to Europe. I think all these things are coming together at the same time, and I think they're not healthy. I think the oil market needs stability, and we need to remove a lot of that geopolitical influence and focus on supply and demand.
Okay, sir. Does this mark a new era where OPEC Plus behaves more like a geofinancial alliance than just a cartel of producers?
Well, you could say,
And how can this whole situation be solved, sir?
so a cartel, a French word, right? A French-Italian word, a cartel,
It's a
is,
French-Italian word?
yes, it is, you could say, geopolitical or geofinancial or geoeconomic a little bit, right? So it's nothing new. But I think the problem now is OPEC Plus is no longer behaving like a cartel, right? For OPEC Plus to truly behave like a good, efficient cartel, you need that strong Saudi Arabian Russian alliance, which today is cracking. Because it's cracking, OPEC Plus is unable to operate like a cartel. So OPEC's enemies are able to put pressure on the price of oil.
Maher Nicolas Ferzeli, thank you for your deep insights into OPEC Plus's evolving strategy and the geopolitics of oil. The numbers may seem modest, but in today's volatile market, every barrel carries a political consequence. As OPEC Plus recalibrates its supply strategy, another kind of negotiation is unfolding, one not over barrels, but over lives. From Washington to Tel Aviv, President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu clashed in a heated call that could redefine the path to Gaza peace. According to Axios, an explosive phone call between Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu exposed how far apart the two allies have drifted on Gaza. When Hamas responded with conditional acceptance of Trump's proposed ceasefire plan, the former U.S. president saw opportunity, but Netanyahu saw betrayal. You're always so negative, quote unquote, Trump, of course. Trump reportedly snapped, frustrated by Netanyahu's refusal to celebrate progress. Hours later, under U.S. pressure, Israel halted airstrikes behind the scenes. Trump's envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, are preparing to lead talks in Cairo aimed at securing a deal that would free remaining hostages and end the war. The exchange has peeled back the layers of relationship long defined by strategy, but now strained by ego, ambition, and a changing global context. Joining us now from Toronto is Ahmed Khattab, a political researcher and instructor of international relations in Georgetown University, to analyze this extraordinary exchange, what it reveals about the future of U.S.-Israel relations, and the politics behind Trump's pursuit of peace, sir. Sir, a very warm welcome, and it's a pleasure to have you with us in our program In Focus. This call between Trump and Netanyahu was unusually heated. What does it tell us about the changing dynamics between the two leaders?
Hello, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you. I think it first and foremost reveals Trump's frustration, right? There's perhaps even a slight desperation from Trump's tone with regarding to him trying to secure himself another foreign policy win. Let's just make sure that we set the points right on this. So the U.S. certainly has leverage over Israel. U.S. politicians have repeatedly stated that because Israel is a sovereign state, right? They're going to decide their own actions. They may not always act in ways that have U.S. approval. But ultimately, the partnership between the U.S. and Israel is going to stand, right? The policies are going to remain aligned, even if there are certain disagreements over specific actions, or even in this case, it seems like there's a disagreement over how Netanyahu should have received sort of the positive signs that have come out of Hamas's response to the Trump peace plan.
Sir, Trump clearly views Hamas conditionally yes as a diplomatic opening. Is he right to interpret it as a progress?
So my short answer is yes. I believe that Hamas simply reciprocated what President Trump has done, and I believe what Trump has done is what we call constructive ambiguity. So in other words, it appears that the Trump plan has intentionally left some elements ambiguous in order to create some space for negotiation and perhaps even compromise. Right. So this might include things like the timeline for, like an exact timeline for Israeli withdrawal, what the Gaza governance structure is going to exactly look like, the need for Hamas to disarm in order to become harmless or not to remain a threat to Israel, without specifically outlining what kinds of weapons, perhaps offensive weapons versus defensive weapons. So all these kinds of things sort of reveal that Trump probably does view the conditional yes as progress. This is nothing new when it comes to Trump's own negotiation style, right? So he typically includes an over-ask, right? So he includes a lot of elements in his demands from states in negotiations on different issues. He usually includes a high level of threat, right? So he backs his demands with a lot of threats, which we have seen with the case of this plan with regards to Hamas in order to intimidate them. And then he usually follows by some level of compromise, right? So he might give up a few small things here and there, but ultimately, I do, yes, believe he views it as a progress.
But sir, he doesn't need to intimidate Hamas at this point because Hamas is okay and is down to what's taking place now. The only factor that is not well understood is Netanyahu, which is not happy about what's going on, of course, obviously, and apparently, and everybody reads this. Plus, everybody is not confident in Netanyahu, and all analysts see that Netanyahu is not the person that gives a word and sticks to it, and he can change it at any minute. This is the first. Of course, aspect. The second aspect is that everybody sees that if this war ends, then Netanyahu goes to the ICC and is under a lot of pressure at this point and goes and gets into bigger problems. So he doesn't this war to end.
Yes. So I believe that Trump has in the back of his mind, and certainly do the rest of the U.S. Negotiators and even the mediators, what they might have perceived to be some sort of insistence on the part of Hamas with regards to things like complete withdrawal, the release of many more Palestinian prisoners, specifying which prisoners even for Israel to release, etc. And I think they might have also in reference refusal by Hamas of what came to be known as the Witkoff plan this past summer as well, or the Witkoff proposal. Right. And so here, I do believe that President Trump is very much interested in getting some real progress done.
He is, sir, but how can we guarantee that if Hamas releases the detainees, then Benjamin Netanyahu will do all his promises and will release, of course, the Palestinian prisoners, plus move on with the plan that is a 20-point plan.
Yes, so I think Netanyahu has two main problems here. One is more on the immediate short term, and one is on the longer term. So on an immediate level, there is a real political concern for Netanyahu, right? So he is clearly worried about the collapses of his ruling coalition, right? There have been very credible threats by some of the main elements of his coalition, namely Smotrich, right, and his religious Zionist party, Ben Gvir as well, and his party. And so these are real worries when it comes to whether Netanyahu is able to continue in power through his ruling coalition. On a broader scale, as you had rightly mentioned, and I do agree with you, there is a lot of problems when it comes to Netanyahu globally, right? So I would even argue he has nothing left but his local legacy. So he certainly worries that given the current Arab and Muslim backing of the Trump plan, right, given the current international attention that the Palestinian cause has after the UN summit, after the important recognitions of the Palestinian state that we have seen, he's worried that his agreement with this plan might actually pave the way for a Palestinian state in the future, right? Which, of course, his right-wing supporters would definitely view as a great loss, as a catastrophe. And Netanyahu himself has called a Palestinian state an existential threat to Israel. And I think these are the two main things that are driving this anxiety on part of Netanyahu and perhaps his hesitance to endorse any conditional acceptance or even positive signs that come from Hamas.
I hope he's always in anxiety, sir. How might this affect Israel's military posture in Gaza and its willingness to engage in the upcoming Cairo talks?
So I believe that Israel will try as much as possible to stay clear of any signs of retreat or even defeat, right? So they might attempt to stall certain things. We already see signs of this. Netanyahu has declared, for example, that the ceasefire will not go into effect until one main demand in the Trump peace plan is fulfilled, which is the release of all hostages, alive and dead. So a lot of stalling might be attempted. Right, and I believe this should at least go on until there are clear signs of an Israeli advantage or even triumph in this war, right? Because almost 2 years into the war, Israel has not achieved some of its key goals, right? Namely, getting the hostages back, right?
Sir,
and so,
go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say that so the Cairo talks, I believe, is going to reveal sort of Israel's attempts to maximize pressure. So I think this is the time when Israel is really going to step up the pressure on Hamas, on the mediators themselves, right, to ensure that the plan is interpreted in its advantage, right? So as much as possible, that Hamas's disarmament is fulfilled, right, in the way that Israel sees Israel has demanded that it's included in ensuring that Hamas is disarmed. Right, Gaza's governance as well, to exclude the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. So these are all things that Israel is really going to try to put pressure in order to ensure that they are achieved.
Sir, Trump managed to pressure Israel into halting airstrikes just hours after the call, despite, of course, no airstrikes were halted. Does this demonstrate a new level of leverage over Netanyahu?
I don't think it demonstrates a new level of leverage. I believe that the U.S. has always had leverage over Israel. And I believe that Israel and Netanyahu understand that Trump relies heavily on personal diplomacy. Trump values the world seeing his exercising of leverage over all parties, by the way, including Israel itself. So I think these kinds of understandings of political dynamics have to do with what kind of personality the leader has, are probably what's driving the actions and decisions over here.
Sir, Netanyahu's aides later claimed full alignment. Are these reassurances credible or an attempt to save political face?
Well, I believe they are credible. Right, in the sense that I believe that Israel will remain committed to at least cooperating on the deal, right? So they will cooperate with the mediators, they will cooperate with the U.S. on this plan. But I mean, as previous ceasefire breakdowns have actually revealed, nothing is guaranteed, not even with this plan. And U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has echoed a similar sentiment earlier.
Mr. Ahmed Khattab, in 10 seconds, because I have to wrap up this episode, are you optimistic about the talks that are going to take place in Cairo? And what do you expect from Donald Trump, U.S. President, if Netanyahu does not abide to his own rules and orders?
Well, I think that both sides here, or the three main sides, right? So U.S. is somewhere there, but it's really Hamas and Israel. They both have becoming increasingly aware of what their top priorities are, right? For Hamas, they have mentioned this in the response. They need to stop the bloodshed. They want to ensure that Palestinians in Gaza are able to transition to somewhat of the beginnings of a normal life again. The Israelis are also aware that the world is becoming increasingly frustrated and unaccepting of what's happening in Gaza. And so given that understanding in mind, I do think that there will be some kind of progress, right? There will be some positive results from this peace plan.
So you're optimistic, Ahmed Khattab. Thank you for joining us and for your thoughtful analysis behind the headlines. One truth remains clear: peace, like oil, is now a matter of calculation, leverage, and timing.